settled down. Hello.
I haven't done the intro yet. What are you doing? You can't just start the show. No, you can start the show.
I just
Welcome.
want this to be fun for you after all the serious podcasts you've had over the last 24 hours.
I've had some serious podcasts. People will be listening to those podcasts over the next couple of days with some really interesting people talking about some really interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Nice.
there is some disclaimers on some of those podcasts as well
Yeah.
that everyone needs to know about. This is KimAppa. This is Jarrod. This is Robbie. We're going to talk about something because neither of us are watching a lot of cricket at the moment because
No.
we're not. Because we both need breaks from watching the amount of cricket I mean, I say that. I still was watching the 100 the other day. Can't help myself. But
I'm
wanted-
actively trying not to watch the 100, to be honest. Like, I'm like, listen, I gotta like give time to my life outside of cricket as well.
you and most cricket fans actively trying not to watch the 100. I wanted to talk to you about form a little bit. So I've written about this story a few times in my life. I was having a really, really poor period in my life, and I went and talked to my grandfather, and he was like, "Do you know the story about Greg Chappell?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he's like, "So there was this period when Greg Chappell was playing. I think he was playing ODIs and Test matches, and it was in the days when you would go between the two. And Greg Chappell just keeps making ducks and ones. I think he makes like an 11 or a 12. Then he makes a duck again. Then maybe another one. I forgot. I need to write down the exact numbers because it's really interesting to me." And
I think it was 8 ducks in a row or something like that.
I don't think it was that many ducks, but it was like 8 low scores in a row. You're right. And Greg Chappell is really, really confused about all this. And when he's asked about it by the press, he's like, "I'm batting really good, but I keep getting out." And that story has always meant quite a lot within my family. As I said, it was used as a thing of like, sometimes things aren't going your way, but that doesn't mean that you stop, right? Like you keep doing the preparation and you get it right and everything else. But it does tell you a little bit about form and about the sort of the fluctuations that we get within form and everything else. So, Robbie, I'm going to start very simply. What is form?
Wow.
Yeah.
Form is.
It's not simple at all. I
the-
completely threw you
No,
under
it's
the
not
bus
simple,
for no
yeah.
reason.
Yeah, no, I'm used to this by now. How many episodes have we done?
How many times have I thrown you under the bus? I'll get the stats on that for you later.
Yeah, we need stats on that, to be very honest. It's the one thing you've been in good form with.
Oh, always. I don't lose form with that.
So I think form to me is the ability to perform the skills that you want to perform with a certain amount of control consistently.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense though. I think the control and the consistency is the way that is worth looking at it. And so when we're out of form, let's forget the control for a moment. When we're out of form, I think the consistency is the hard thing to be able to find, right? So if you're out of form, how do you get back into form is probably that's like if you and I could answer that question over and over again, we'd be a lot richer than we are, right? Like it's a really
Yeah.
tough thing to be able to understand how to get back to being consistent.
Yeah, it is. It's not easy. It certainly is one of the more challenging things to do. It's something I've been very lucky to have read at a very young age. I don't know if you heard of this. Have you heard of Rudy Webster?
Yes. Is that Dr.
Yes,
Rudy
so
Webster?
Dr. Rudy Webster, yeah, Rudy Valentine Webster. So he wrote a book which was basically a bunch of interviews that he did with some of the best batters of the time. Right?
Winning Ways? Is that what it was called?
Winning Ways. Oh my God, that book. That book was freaking amazing. And I think it's in that book that I read about Greg Chappell being like hopelessly out of form and not scoring runs, right? And he goes about interviewing all of these great batters from those times. And I vividly remember reading about Sir Vivian Richards, which just made me a bigger fan of his after reading that piece, his interview. And I read that piece at least 40 times, 40, 50 times, because I loved it. And one of the things he said that, which I've like, as far like I'll take that to my grave. It's one of the things with when it comes to cricket, that's something I'll actually take to my grave. And it's one of the things I struggled with, because I was so like conscious about it and tried too hard to do it. And but it only worked for me when I actually absolutely relaxed, and came down to saying, okay, this is one thing I need to do, right? And he said, when I'm out of form, the first thing that I do is I stop worrying about my technique altogether. I'm not trying to bat well. All that I'm trying to do is trying to watch the ball from the bowler's hand till I've played the ball, till after I've played the ball, right? I'm paraphrasing, but for me, that little piece is something that I think, uh, you know, exemplifies what one needs to do with batting in a gist, right? To like by just doing that act of watching the ball, uh, by by proxy, you are actually just trusting your technique. You're not worried about your hands and your feet and your head and all of that, and you're taking away all the kind of simultaneous things that a batter needs to do to get to that zone, so to speak. You're not worried about getting into a zone. You're not worried about scoring runs. You're not worried about, where your head is, what the field is like. But you're just worried about watching the ball. You're just concerned with watching the ball and playing the ball till after you've played the ball, right? So it means from the bowler's hand as he's running into bowl, he loads up, releases the ball, pitches, comes to you, then you play it, and then you kind of relax and switch off and switch on again. That for me, I think, was the most brilliant piece of advice I've read in a book. It was a very rare occasion, like very rare for me to actually read a book about cricket whilst I was playing it. But that one
Mm.
book, I must have been 17 or 18 when I read it. I absolutely loved that book. And for me, that for me is, I think, the epitome of batting. How well are you watching the ball? And when you watch batters, like some of the best batters in the world, like Sachin Tendulkar, bro. I've seen Sachin Tendulkar, like us watching a match on television at an Indian High Embassy, watching a test match. He's seeing the back of a bowler, right? And he's seeing the like as he's loading up, he's calling what it's going to be. He's saying it's going to be in swinger, out, and he's calling it. And when he bats, and people have heard the stories about Paji Sachin Tendulkar so many times about how he not just watches the ball, he kind of watches the seam and what the bowler is doing with the seam, right? And
Mm.
for me, I think some of the greatest batters have always done that incredibly well. Virat Kohli, for that matter, sort of Ganguly, Rahul Dravid, Ricky Ponting, Matthew Hayden. Matthew Hayden would walk down the wicket, man. His eyes wouldn't go off the ball at all, at all. And for
So,
me, I think that is the epitome of batting.
so we know that Sachin lost form towards the end of his career, right?
Mm,
And there would have been little periods within that where he lost form. Like,
mm,
is that forgetting to look at the ball? Is that
mm.
getting fixated on your hands or your feet or your
Yeah,
head? Do you
yeah.
think that's so? So do you think
I think
then
it is that.
form is form is something that you forget what you do that makes it work, and so it's very hard to go back to the thing that made it work?
I think form is the lack of form is being overwhelmed by multiple things at the same time, and you're trying to figure out all of those pieces at the same time, right? Because with batting, it's a matter of timing, right? The foundational piece is getting ready early. Like if you get ready early, you're giving yourself the best chance to play the ball well. If you get ready half a second late, you're behind the ball. You're playing catch up with the ball from that moment onwards, right? Uh,
Mm.
but with but with uh, you know with batting, we when we are out of form, we're generally overwhelmed with more than one or two aspects at the same time. It's all
Mm.
happening simultaneously, and our mind is trying to you know gather all of those things and kind of line them up in a row, right? One after the other, so where it cascades one after the other. So like you tick one box, tick the other one, tick the other one, tick the other one, and everything falls into place. But funnily enough, I've noticed, especially a little later on, post my first transformation in batting, I noticed that if I can get ready early and track the ball, irrespective of where my hands are, what I'm doing with my technique, more often than not, I end up playing the ball with the middle of my bat.
Mm.
And for me, that is a great place to start from, right? Because you got to exist at the wicket for you to score runs, right? And what gives you the best chance to exist at the wicket is by actually getting ready early and watching the ball through and through, right?
It
And that,
no, for
yeah,
sure.
and that's the foundation I think on which batting should be built, right? Any batter, that should be the first number one priority. Just getting ready early and watching the ball, and then trusting your technique. And then if you're out of form during the course of a series, you're like, okay, you reduce the number of shots that you have, and you say, okay, I have 5, 6 scoring shots, but I'm going to bring it down to 2 scoring shots. And the rest of those deliveries, I'm going to try and get ready early, watch the ball, play it into the gaps, and rotate the strike.
Mm.
And that's how you manage form. And you do that long enough, you stay with that, and you're disciplined with it. If you have the mental wherewithal and the emotional wherewithal to kind of stay there for a period of time, your game begins to expand again, which is an incredibly beautiful experience to go through whilst that's happening to you. It's so much fun to experience that because you exist, and that in itself is a kind of a zone. It's
Mm.
not a zone of maximums, it's a zone of minimums, right? And then you kind of expand upon that over a period of time, which is phenomenal, man. Which I don't think words can kind of encapsulate what that feels like. It's you got to live it in a sense.
Do you think though there are times when, because we tell everyone there's the famous Darren Lehman thing, isn't there, where he puts it's WTBC, which is what's the ball, swear word, right? which he puts up. We're all told, and I was coaching under sevens yesterday, and I'm saying, are you looking at me? Or are you looking at the ball? Like we're all
Mm,
told that. There are times when people are trying to look at the ball though, and they're just not seeing it the way that they should, right? So,
mm, mm,
in my book, I talked to a woman who has worked with hundreds of, maybe even thousands of cricketers across the world now about how sometimes when they think they're looking at the ball, they're not even looking at the ball. They're looking around it. They're looking at the
mm.
bowler's face. They're looking at something else. So it's not as easy to say just look at the ball, because if that was the case, we could all do it. Were there times when you felt like you were trying to look at the ball and it just wasn't working for you?
Mm. Yeah, there were. Because there were times when I was trying too hard and I was trying to be too precise about it. I was kind of seeking perfection, so to speak.
Mm.
You want to be in the general area of where the ball's being released, right? I remember a time, I don't know if I've told you the story about playing Malinga when he first came into the scene. Um, so when Mali first came into the scene, I was what 19, 18, 19. We were playing India A versus Sri Lanka A. We were playing the Duleep Trophy, where Sri Lanka played the Duleep Trophy. Sri Lanka A team also played the Duleep Trophy. So we were playing Sri Lanka A, South Zone versus Sri Lanka A, and I remember Mali bowling red ball. This is red ball cricket, right?
Mm.
And Mali was wayward. He was like rusty means like rusty means proper rusty, like erratic kind of fast bowler. One ball here, like there was a spell where he bowled 4 balls down the leg side with a beamer that went down the leg side, and then one absolute yorker and one peach of an outswinger, right? And you're like, okay, how are you gonna like?
Mm.
You gotta pick the ball up, right? And so for me, in fact, I just gone through my first kind of NLP, first few sessions of NLP with a practitioner. And so I'd gotten into this whole visualization kind of mode at that point in time. And in that phase, I was standing in the non-striker's end. I was trying to watch where is he delivering the ball out of. And I got the general direction of the ball and felt like it was coming out of uh, it didn't come from here, and I thought here. But when I started observing him a little closely in the non-striker's end, it felt like he was coming out more from the umpire's face. So he was not
Mm.
as low as he ended up being in the end. He was more from the umpire's face. So after a point, because it was also slingy, right? He'd run in like that, and then he'd sling into that and then bowl, right?
Yeah.
So with him, I started watching the ball in his hand. As soon as he jumped, my focus went straight to the umpire's face. And and then I started picking the ball straight out of the umpire's face. So I didn't try to focus too hard on the ball and saying, okay, I want to watch the full part. Even if he's hiding it, I want to try and see it. Or, even if it goes down, I want to see it. I was like, no, when the ball's being released, are my eyes still enough to capture the ball then? And then that's what kind of worked for me. I started watching the face of the umpire, and then I started getting the ball out of his, like, pick the ball up from there. After that, it was easy to bat against him, in a sense, because you start picking the ball. Otherwise, it's obviously, it's unorthodox. It's not the norm. What we face, like the difference between Brett Lee and him, or a Sean Tate versus a Chaminda Vas is very, very different, right? Sean Tate for me was one of the toughest bowlers to face, because when he wound up to deliver the ball in his jump, you lost the ball completely, right?
Put it
And
behind his back, didn't
he,
he?
yeah, and he would rocket the ball in, man. Like, if you're watching, if you can see the ball in the bowler's hand, you can capture it at some point. But when it's coming at 150 clicks bare minimum, right? And you're and he's hiding the ball, that shit gets really hard really quickly.
No, it's really fascinating, that sort of watching the ball and everything else. But the form question goes beyond just, are you watching the ball? Because it's, do you feel that something has changed within you, right? So if you think about it from a very, if you think about it almost taking away like a scientific, if you think about it like a scientifically experiment, no one in the world has the ability to match the lab conditions of the thing that they did well. So let's say you make 100, or you write a really good screenplay, or you paint a good picture, or whatever. That moment is never going to happen again, because it's never going to be the same wicket against the same bowlers with the ball doing exactly the same thing and everything else. And so what you talked about before, that sort of control and consistency, is that thing of, I don't think all athletes know exactly what it is that made them good in the first place. They are very fast. They're very tall. They have incredible hand-eye coordination. They have a beautiful technique, whatever it is that gets them to the level at 23, 24, 25 of being an international player. Maybe they then get picked and they go on to be successful. And then suddenly, maybe they get a small injury in their left knee, and their bat flow starts coming down incorrectly, right? Maybe they start getting stress fractures in their feet for the first time as a bowler, whatever that is, and they start landing slightly differently. All these sorts of things. That's when I think it's more interesting, because that's when we get to the point of where it's not even really about form at that stage. It's the consistency of being able to do the same movements over and over again when there are lots of different things around you.
It's true, but I think the ones, and there's a whole lot of them at the international level, who are blissfully unaware about what brings them success,
Yes.
right? But I think the ones that are the most aware about what brings them success continue to reach the tops of their career, or the echelons of international cricket, right? Because they know their method to their madness, what brings them success, whether it's their technique, whether it's form, whether it's batsmanship, um, whether it's you know the method through which they score their runs. They're well aware of it. For example, I'm certain that Pujara, after his knee injuries to both of his knees, changed his technique up a little bit so that it adjusted to you know his um, say his speed between the wickets, or the way he moved within the wicket whilst playing fast bowlers at that same level, right? Because it's a huge adjustment, right? And you need to be able to adjust what form means to you pre-injury, post-injury as well. And it's a brand new field. It'll not be, it could be in the ballpark of what felt like pure form for you before, but uh, there will be a very nuanced difference between that and what today is like pure form for you, where everything is kind of falling into place and everything lines up like a row of ducks, you know. Um, and I think people who are aware catch it and they build on it, right? And people who are unaware are lost for a period of time, and then they hope to get there. And in that sense, as a batter, it can get pretty lonely because you are competing with other batters within your team. So even if someone catches it, they won't necessarily say it to you. Especially the competition's high.
Mm.
So there are a lot of, and can be a very lonely ride for a while.
Mm.
you know
No,
and
it's.
again,
I mean,
depends
that's.
on, and your person, it depends on the on a person's personality. Is he open to listening, not open to listening? There are people willing to help, but are you open enough to listen and to grasp what's being said, and then check if that's actually true or not, and if it's not, discard it, but still operate from a place of gratitude. And that keeps you in a emotionally good space to kind of get to a solution much more quickly, rather than being disgruntled about not being in good form. That doesn't give you the best chance to get to you returning back into form as well. I think that also plays a big part.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception about professional athletes that because we see them on TV and they're playing for India or New Zealand or Pakistan or whoever, that they know exactly what has got them to that point. And as you said, that isn't really the case. And sometimes I've had conversations with players and I'll be saying things and be like, what are you talking about? And I'll be like, oh, that thing that you do. And they were like, I didn't know that was a thing. And I didn't understand that this was happening. And so the way I've always looked at it is it's very hard to put the machine back together if you don't know how the machine worked in the first place. And because I had massive imposter syndrome because I never finished high school, right? And I'm a professional writer in England and I never finished high school. So I had this incredible imposter syndrome. So around 2014, 2015, I was like, what happens if I just run out of writing form, right?
Mm.
What actually happens at that point? Like that's it. No one's ever going to hire me again. I'm going to finish my career. So I literally spent about 6 to 12 months going through everything I'd ever written to understand what I did and why it worked and how it went together, right? Much harder to do that as a professional athlete than it is, in writing or, these other sorts of
No,
things.
I think it's the same.
Yeah, no, I just mean it's
100%.
easier as a writer because if I can take 6 months to do this, it's very hard to do that as a professional athlete because you've got games coming up and everything else. Like there's a time factor that I had available to me,
Sure.
but that was the thing that kind of allowed me to get in. I'm not sure I became a better writer off the back of all that, but I knew when I have bad days now, I can tell exactly why I've had the bad day. And so I can go back and do it. So many people, as we said, do you remember Rahat Ali, who played for Pakistan? Rahat
Mm.
Ali is what, 6'4", left armor, bowls 84, 85 miles an hour, can swing it a little bit. He's such a natural in everything he does, right? That it's like he probably got pushed through all the systems because how many 6'4" left arm bowlers are there that can bowl over 80 miles an hour? He's
Mm.
now at the international level trying to work out what it is that makes him Rahat Ali, right? And that's a really hard thing when something else goes wrong. As we said, maybe it's a little thing in your knee. Maybe you get smashed a couple of times. Maybe you're not on the right kind of pitches, whatever. If you don't have the ability to sort of break that down and put it back together again, it's really hard. You get lost really quickly and you see players who kind of fade away at 24, 25, 26, 27 before they even reach their peaks because it's actually probably just a loss of form and off the back of that they lose all confidence in themselves.
And that's why I keep singing the song about form being, it's about how confident you feel about your game and how good you feel about your
Mm,
game. The more confident you are, the more form you will hit, right? And there's a lot more to what that statement is beyond what you just read it for, or see it as, right? What does confidence come from? Confidence
mm,
comes from the ability to uh, repeatedly do something at a very high quality, right? And then you build that long enough and far enough for it to become second nature, right? I'll give you a prime example. Harshal Patel, right? I think it was the 2020 IPL, 2021, no, 22 IPL, 21 IPL, right? So Harshal was nursing an injury. I think it was a part of the Indian team, just out of the Indian team, something like that. And our man had an injury. If I'm not wrong, it was a foot injury or a shoulder injury. No, it was a back injury. It was a back injury, right? And for the life of him, his slow balls that dipped just
weren't
weren't
dipping.
dipping anymore. And he was taken to the cleaners by most. He was getting wickets, but not on the slower deliveries anymore. right? But he was getting taken to the cleaners, and you could you could tell that the confidence just wasn't there. You could look at him, and he just looked glassy eyed, right? He was like, where is this gone? I don't know what it is. But if you've been in the game long enough, you'll understand that because of the back injury, and he recovered from it, I think it was a stress fracture, he just recovered from it. He wasn't finishing his action, right? Because he
Mm.
wasn't finishing it, the ball was hanging in the air and not dipping anymore, right? And it would take a while for him to even subconsciously be able to trust his back again to go through
Yeah.
whole process. Now that is very nuanced, and it's something that you need to have a lot of self-awareness of yourself,
Mm.
right? To even kind of talk about it, you need to be able to say, okay, what is off? Okay, he's not finishing. Why is he not finishing? You move to the why of why is this not happening? What's going to take this for it to happen for him? And then suddenly it's like everything falls into place, and you're like, okay, his back was gone. And so because of his back being gone, it's going to take a while before he's going to be able to, not consciously, he probably consciously knows it, but subconsciously there's something that's holding him back to complete his action fully, so as for him to get that dip on the ball when he delivers the slower ball,
Mm.
right? And that again takes a while, and it's also confidence, right? To be able to have enough faith in your body to do it over and over again at a high quality, and that's why I keep saying form is about confidence, like how much confidence you have in your own game to be able to repeat a skill over and over again at a very high level. And when you do that long enough, you feel like $1,000,000 and you feel unstoppable, especially at that level. Because at that level, your every question will be answered to the T. And so if you
Mm.
have questions that people don't have answers to, the confidence just kind of skyrockets. And then you're unstoppable at that level. At the highest level, that is for me. Uh, what is this question out of nowhere, man?
No, no, I brought it up because it's kind of that. I think what you're about to get to was the levels being asked. This
Question for
person
DK.
he accidentally got you wrong there, but he's asked two questions, so we made more money out of his mistake. But essentially, we could ask DK. One of us will text him, and we'll
Yeah, I will
see
ask
if
him
he
at
can
some
get
point.
back live on the show. Can form be affected by external factors, i.e., our toxic media hounds players extremely hard? It must be
Yeah.
very hard to remain healthy. And so that's what, when you were talking about answering the questions at the highest level, this is that next question of if you go through a dip, and it could be a technical thing, it could be conditions don't go in your way, it could just be that you get met a couple of times, right? You match
Yeah.
up badly against a player and he starts smashing you, and in your mind you think whatever, and it drops your confidence, as you said before. When does the outside stuff become an issue?
The outside stuff is par for the course. Yeah, it just keeps happening all the time. So you have to kind of get thick-skinned about it, right? For me, and I think with the onset of social media, that's actually today that's it's the norm, right? I'm from that age where I had the best of both worlds, like the non-social media cricketing world and the social media cricketing world, right? So for
Mm.
me, it took me a while to adjust to this. Having said that, you just have to get thick-skinned about it and just like shut the door down there and
Yeah,
control
but
the narrative there,
you
like
don't
in the sense
really
of
get thick-skinned about it, though, do you? Because there's
it does
there's
affect you, but it affects
yeah,
you less and less over a period of time,
agreed.
right? You
Yep.
just kind of take it in your stride and you accept it and like, okay, I can't change this. I'm not going to try and change this. I'm going to drive my energies not here, but I'm going to drive my energies to the areas that serve me, right? So it is challenging, and if you don't have the mental fortitude to have that and the mental capacity to take that and or create that space to take that hit along with say lack of form, then it's going to affect you very very deeply. It's going to make you question your worthiness as an athlete, if you're worthy even to play at this level, or
Mm.
am I actually as good as I believe I am, or is it just like a puff of dust in the air. It's just was there for a second, then it just went away. And then it takes a lot to kind of build that up. And that's something that people have to simultaneously kind of manage at this point in time, which again is not easy. Makes the whole being out of form journey that much more challenging, right? There would be times when if I was not in form, I would just not read the newspapers. I would just not like I stopped subscribing to a newspaper after a certain point in time, especially in that period when I was going through clinical depression and all that. I was just like I stopped subscribing to newspaper completely. I stopped reading the newspaper, and then it just became a great habit. It's something that Sachin Tendulkar, I think, told us when we were youngsters. He said, "You want to play cricket for a long time? Stop reading the newspapers, whether it's good news or bad news. Don't read about it."
I think that's one that I would definitely say when it comes to these sorts of things. So, you know, I've got some young writers and young people who work for me, and we'll put a project up, and like there'll be like 20 comments slagging them off, and they'll be like, look what this person said, and I went, but you know that's wrong. You know they've misunderstood something, or they just looked at the headline and they forgot to, and maybe they didn't even read the whole headline. You don't need to worry about that, but you also don't need to worry about it when people tell you you're great, right? Because that doesn't help you either. And so it's very, very tough. I remember the whole Sachin Tendulkar newspaper thing's interesting because, you know, he said that to Justin Langer, and Justin Langer went, that's not how life works, though, is it? Like, someone is still going to say, oh, you must feel bad after that article that was written about you, or really sorry to hear about, you know, your form at the moment or whatever. You have to learn how to deal with that sort of up and down. And again, I think that's what probably makes the best professionals, is the ability to understand that it's going to come in waves. And you know, I always find, you know, when I worked on Cricinfo and YouTube work really similar. In fact, it happened to you on the comments recently, where like one person put a bad comment
I want to talk
on,
about
and then
that, right?
yeah, and then everyone puts bad comments on, and I was like, that's just how it happens. But you hadn't factored in all the positive comments that had come in the last 10 episodes before that.
So for me, I came from the perspective of, like, for me, this space is new, right? Like, for me, I've just started like doing this stuff right now, you know, broadcasting, journaling about cricket and all of that, right? And talking about cricket in that sense. This is, in a sense, video journalism, right? What we're doing right now. And so for me, I was like, I approached it from a student's perspective. So I was like, okay, I want to learn, like from the feedback I'm getting from the people, am I actually like, and that, which is why I was like, hey guys, you know, this is what's been coming in over the last few episodes. Do you guys feel it as well? Because I'm like, I want to see if I need to make a shift in the way I'm approaching things with how I'm doing it. So that came more from a understanding and kind of not uplifting, but kind of upskilling myself is concerned, right? Because I didn't study this, right? This is something that just comes to me a little naturally. I'm like, I'm doing it, and I enjoy doing it. I love doing it because it's my favorite subject in the world. And also I'm doing it with you, and it's fun, and it's all of that, right? But also I'm like, hey, I want to be good at this for a long period of time. And if you're not approaching it from a student's perspective or from the perspective of learning and evolving, then I feel it closes the door on you improving over a period of time at what you're doing. And for me, even with Sachin Tendulkar and what he said about not reading the newspaper when you're in bad form, he said that across the board, whether you're doing well or not doing well.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he didn't say it only about bad form. He said it about both. So it wasn't about it, like it was across the board, right? So that you're unaffected by the good or the bad, and you're focused on what needs to be done for your team and for your country. And for me, that is what I took away from that conversation or from that piece of advice that he gave us. And he's like, for me, okay, it shouldn't matter what people are saying, right? As long as I know I'm aligned with my processes, I'm aware of these things that bring me success, then I'm just going to keep doing that, and I'm going to work through that space with awareness, and like there are a number of cricketers that you can speak to who are incredibly good at what they do, but you ask them about how they do what they do, you've written a book about the art of batting.
But they don't know how to explain it. They don't know how to explain it.
They don't know how to articulate it. They don't know how to articulate it. And that's, and it's not because one is, I think sometimes people don't want to give away their secrets. Other times I think it is because they're not able to comprehend into words what that feels like, and they probably feel they probably do injustice to what they're trying to share, or they just don't have the wherewithal to articulate what they actually do, or they have done in the past that have brought them success, because they've been unaware of it to a certain degree.
So this is where I think it's really interesting, because I think that there's a reason why great players don't become great coaches automatically, right? And it's because so much of what they do is subconscious. And when you ask them a question about it, as you said, they don't know how to process the answer because it's so obvious to them right? And it's so ingrained in them that they can't explain it to you in the way that you need it explained, right? And it's we see it again and again. It's not that no great players become coaches, but it's not as consistent. Whereas struggling players, they're like everything they do is so conscious, so it's easy for them to be able to explain this to everyone else. And so this is a big thing of like, I think a lot of form is probably if you're a player who needs to be conscious, right, and you need to think through every single moment to be able to get to a flow state, right? Because what we're talking about with form is generally you get to a point where it works for you automatically. But if you're someone who has to do that by being very conscious, right, or if you're someone who has to do that by being very subconscious. So if you talk about Virender Sehwag, right, like singing if Virender Sehwag is singing at the crease, he's probably in a good headspace. If Virender Sehwag is sitting there going, "Oh, I'm not doing this right. I'm not doing this wrong," he's probably not in the headspace that he needs to be, right? And all players have different versions of that. But the point being is
Flow of energy.
form is probably just slipping to the wrong side of what you are doing at any one time because you're overthinking it or you're underthinking it or you're not focusing on the right thing. But this is where the external thing is quite interesting. There is probably articles that Sachin Tendulkar could have read that would have actually helped him fix issues that he had, right? And there are probably other articles that he would have read that would have completely ruined him. And so that's where the external noise is very hard. When you get to a point where you can sort of harness form and find it regularly, is probably when you can do the thing that no one can ever teach you, which is how to work these things out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right in saying that. I'm sure there were a bunch of interviews that Sachin Paji could have read that would have served him
Yeah.
in a massive way, right? And some that would have completely destroyed, his confidence as well. And if you think about it, no, like there are times where even during the course of a game or a course of an innings, bowlers and batters go blissfully out of form and back into form.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? They'll be batting like a dream in the first session. They come back after lunch and it's like they don't know how to hold a bat and something's just switched off. It's flow of energy, right? And you get into this headspace sometimes and so mental sometimes where you get into this headspace where just the energy is not flowing like you want it to. Something would have happened, something as minuscule as um, uh, something as minuscule as you know you didn't put your shoe right, and so your pads haven't sat right, and because the pads haven't sat right, it's just something like the flow is broken completely, and it feels like the guy who scored 100 before lunch suddenly feels like he can't bat for nuts after post lunch, and then that again it becomes internal work, right? That's the fight within. Like, how do you kind of contend with that internally, and then how do you come back and hit reset and come back to working and focusing on the things that work for you, even as early as before lunch, and again stack them together and break them down and stack them together and come back to focusing on one thing, and then do the most simplest thing at that point in time, and then add one more aspect, add another aspect after that, and then suddenly they'll fall into place. They just they just fall in line, and that is an incredible experience, right? When people start perceiving that as a challenge, it becomes harder to overcome. But when people start perceiving that as an opportunity, like, hey, I get to do this one more time, it becomes so much more exciting to kind of navigate through, and you get to the end. And I think life's like that, right? And you look at life, and then everything's going well, and suddenly something happens, and everything's shook, right? Everything's all out of whack suddenly, and then you're not able to bring yourself down to what was great, and then you gratitude's gone out of the window, good energy's gone out of the window, and you're suddenly focusing on just the problem. You're not in the present at all. You're not enjoying the gift of just being here today, right? And okay, yes, there are things to contend with, but how can I contend with that in a way where I'm approaching it from a place of, okay, what can I do here and now with this one thing? What is the easiest thing for me to do with this difficult aspect that I'm experiencing right now? What's the easiest thing to do? It could be one little thing which wouldn't move the needle in any
Yep.
way, but it could start pressuring the needle to move. Do just that, right? And I think that's the beauty of cricket. You get into these little intricacies, you start seeing how you can find real world applications for it as well.
One of the more interesting recent ones is Babar Azam, right? So he comes in. Test cricket doesn't make any runs. ODI cricket makes a lot of runs, and then suddenly he makes runs everywhere. And while he's doing that, he goes through, I wouldn't say a form drop, but he goes through a bit where I think he realizes that the bowlers are going to bowl, because he's got that sort of open stance, they're going to bowl a little bit wider to him to try and bring his front foot over a little bit, get him reaching at those balls outside of stuff. And so he moves into where he bats more closed position on middle stump, right? All batting nerding stuff that only you and I care about. But he goes on a surge after that, right? And my guess is he goes on a surge after that because when he's changed his technique, he's hyper focused on watching the ball for a little while because he's so nervous that he's made this change to his technique. It turns out over a period of time that him moving in front of the stumps is now the issue, and people are bowling straighter to him, and he's having more trouble with that, and his front leg is in the way. He's seeing this as a technical problem, and it probably is, right? There's probably a technical aspect to it, and that's why he's struggling with form. But the bigger problem, Robbie, is probably that he's so worried about where his feet is and where people are bowling to him that he has forgotten about just looking at the ball, because now you've got the media, now you've got a new coach, now you've got another new coach, now you've got a captain, now you've got another new chairman, now you've got another new chairman, right? There's so much everything else. It's like there's so much going on with Babar Azam. And now you see he's been dropped from the T20 team for the Asia Cup, right? There's so much going on with him now that he's almost forgotten the ability to just go out there and bat. And you and I both know that naturally there is no problem with Babar Azam, the batter. He picks the ball up as early as anyone. He's got a beautiful, technique when it's working for him and everything else. He's a quite a dogged scorer of runs. Like, he really likes to score runs. But he's got in his own head so much that he's in this sort of perpetual state where he doesn't feel like he's in form. Whereas actually it's probably, to go back to your Viv Richards thing, he's probably just not watching the ball the right way.
Yeah, but also for postmodern cricketers that exist today in the world, it's also much harder to maintain, like, to focus on these aspects, because there's so much of a narrative that's driven with each individual cricketer right now, right? Everyone's a little niche on their own, everyone's a brand of their own. So suddenly you're not just, your lack of form is not only about the lack of runs. It could lead to a lack of funds as well over a period of time, right? It could lead to a lack of relevance and significance as well, which brings a lot of confidence as well as a cricketer. Emotionally and mentally, it brings in a lot of confidence for a cricketer. So those aspects also have a huge impact, right? Today, the sport is not just viewed as a sport. It is also, for a lot of cricketers, life and death. They live and die by what's written about them, and everything is, pegged on that, right? It's also about maintaining that narrative of who they are on and off the field, right? It's not about being real, it's about being what needs to be made for that, to serve the purpose there, or to serve the intentions and goals there, right? So those aspects also make it harder, where you can't go through a natural kind of progressive place to go through the ebbs and flows of form, right? You're right. It could be him just not watching the ball, but he must be all in his head about where his hands are, where his legs are, if he's, what his stance is like. Is he watching the ball with both his eyes or one eye? And is he, what is he doing with that? How much are his hands changing? Who is the person that he trusts his technique with, his batting with? Every batter needs to have that one person that they can go back to, who can give them absolutely pure feedback about their skills, about their technique, about what's working for them and what's not working for them. You don't have that. If you're flying solo on this, God forbid you go out of form, it's going to be hard to find that if you are unaware of what brings you success.
But to get back to your whole thing about, Babar Azam does become a brand really early on. Like, I did a podcast. In fact, Bayram, one of the reasons I hired him is he did a podcast with me about the fans of Babar Azam. And then both of us spent the next 3 weeks just being hounded by the fans of Babar Azam, because it really did become, and you and I both lived through Rohit Sharma fans and Virat Kohli fans. Like, it's exactly the
We're
same
in the
thing.
fan army world.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not fans anymore. It's hard to call them fans. It's like,
well, the original word was fanatic. Players. So I suppose they're the original version of fan, not the modern version of fan, aren't they? But you're right. They're like warriors, because their identity is wrapped up in Babar Azam, right? That's what ends up happening, which is a really interesting thing. And I've read a lot of research on this, and the Ronaldo fans were the first ones I really noticed online that did that, but we've seen it in all different sports now. But once he becomes that, right? And as you said, he needs that one person he can talk to. But if you go back to the Pakistan team, well, it's not going to be a coach because they're not going to have a coach for more than 5 minutes. It's probably not going to be a batting coach because they're also going to rotate through, right? It's not going to be anyone involved in the selection committee because that's a big thing. Who does he trust at a certain point? And then you've got all these people who are trying to support him and be on his side, but they're adding that extra pressure that you were talking about before because it's not just about him making runs and paying his mortgage and securing his future. It's also, he's got this incredible emotional sort of group around him. It's really, really hard. And so you look at someone like Babar Azam and you wonder how you get out, but it's not just Babar Azam that I think about. It's like, do you remember when Steve Smith lost form and suddenly opened the batting for Australia? Like it's that journey that you're on, right? Of like, I remember at the time going, there's no way this can work, but because it's Steve Smith, I'm not going to write it off, right? That's the way I think about it because I wrote him off once. It went very poorly for me, but there was no way it was going to work because why would he suddenly start making more runs when he was opening the batting? What's the logic there? But you can tell what he's thinking is, I'm searching. I got to find that thing. I got to find that thing. And it's like, sometimes you end up making it more complicated than it needs to be, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that's the thing, right? If you are unaware as a batter and you and are not able to control the complexities of your technique, because anyone's technique based on their biomechanics can be complex and is complex and can become very complicated when you are out of form, right? Because you suddenly feel like, although it's one body, everything feels so like foreign, even though it's all you, right? Your hands feel like they're disjointed from your limbs. Your bat feels like it's coming out of nowhere. It's like just all over the shop, and you're just not finding. So you're kind of clenching on the bat hard to just kind of find that place. You're doing that. You're trying to find that place but you just need to let go. And that's one of the things I always tell a lot of my coaches. I tell them, when you're in good form, sit down and write all the things that felt good. Not about what you felt while scoring runs. What felt good about your process, your pre-ball routine? What were you thinking? What are the thoughts that went through your head? If there were just two thoughts, put those two thoughts down. These are the two things I was absolutely focusing on before getting ready to face each ball. Where were my hands? Where were my feet pointing? Like something that you can relate to, so that if you're ever out of form, you can go back and read that book or pick up on those notes and use that as the starting point to work back into form. And work back and use that as the foundation upon which you'll try and rebuild form from. And a lot of guys don't do that because they get lazy with this because things are going well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's
and
a
that happens
example.
not just in cricket, like it happens in life, right? When things are going well, we just get lazy with things. We just kind of sit back. But that's the beauty about life and cricket.
Yeah, when I was an analyst, someone asked me this recently in an interview. And I said, sometimes it was better when we lost, because when we lost, I could get the information to the team that we needed to get in. But when we won, no one wanted to hear from the analyst who's like, actually, if you have a look in this block here, we're not getting this right, whatever. No one wanted to hear that. They wanted to enjoy it. I think that's very fair. The other thing that you said before is, I think that why cricket and life, where they interject when it comes to form and everything else, is there isn't actually a right answer. Like, there will be times when a coach would have come up to you or an editor would have come up to me and said, oh, if you change this, and it's fine. And then you do it. And for the next year, everything goes great. But the truth is that if they said the same thing in a year's time, it wouldn't have the same impact. There isn't really a rule for this. And so you just have to, as you said, if you're looking at what's working when it's working, when things aren't working, you have something to go back to. But if you don't know what was working in the first place, it's very hard to recreate the thing that you never understood, which is, kind of where we're going around here. But my final question for you is, so Don Bradman basically is never out of form, right? Like his whole career, he has this slight dip around the bodyline ashes, but even then he still averages over 50. So I don't know. Take for that whatever you need. What do you think that is, that he is in complete control of the method and being able to recreate it and he doesn't get affected by confidence and external stuff because he had a lot of pressure. Like Don Bradman started as a person who was literally the person who took Australia out of the Depression, right? Like he's Sachin for Australia in the 1930s. Like, hey, it's a
Yeah, yeah,
smaller
of
country,
course.
you don't have the same pressure and everything else, but it is what it is. What do you think it was about someone like Don Bradman that he can repeat that? And you could look at maybe Roger Federer or whatever, those sort of athletes that repeat it so consistently. What do you think is the difference between them and just a normal great athlete?
To be very honest, as in it'll sound very biased to be honest, but this is what I feel. I think they were simpler times. Uh,
Oh yeah,
you know, and when I say simpler times, I mean um, the complexities that existed in the world today didn't exist then, right? Um, and was a lot less to do, so there was a lot more to capture, even with the little things that you had to do in life, right? You still had to provide, you still had to do things well, and you still had to be aware to be successful. And he was aware, right? And I think the you know the it just for me the things that he did really well was, for example, the golf ball and the cricket wicket, right? The
yep,
stump. That exercise against the well or a wall or against the roller.
mm,
That stuff that we've read, like it was folklore for us growing up, right? This is what the
yep,
greatest batsman in the world did, you know, and that was his warm up. That's what he did off season to keep in touch with the game. You know how easy batting becomes. Like for a big part, when I finished my first transformation, a big part of building my game up from there was playing with a middling bat. And so
yeah, the
middling
little
bat, so if a
ones.
bat is like 4.5 inches, a middling bat is maybe 3.5 inches or 3 inches or
I
something.
think, yeah, 2.5, 3, aren't they?
Yeah, 3 inches. I went further, and my middling bat became 2 inches. So it was that big. So it's just the handle and a little bit more, right? So it
Mm,
became really thin. And I would bat with that in the nets. And my whole thing was I don't want to play a single drive. All I need to do is make sure I hit every ball off the bat and I defend really well and get into good positions. Simple stuff, the most basic stuff. It forced me to do the simple stuff at the nets whilst playing the best bowlers in the country or the best bowlers in the world, right? The bowlers didn't appreciate it because if you were middling the bowlers with a middling bat, then it would be like it's like you're taking a dig at them, and
yeah.
then then they're hesitant to bowl bouncers and just be naturally themselves at the nets. So you respected that and you batted for like 10 minutes with that, and then you batted the other. Like if you're batting for half an hour, 10 minutes with the middling bat, then 20 minutes with the
Mm,
full bat. And then when you did that practice, and it became a part of my preparation through and through. So if you saw me warming up, anytime it would be with the middling bat. It would barely be with the regular bat, right? That brought a lot of confidence. Now imagine doing that with a golf ball.
yeah.
You are 10xing your confidence because suddenly the ball looks like a freaking football, man. After that, right? So batting suddenly seems so much more easier, right? And I'm certain he had like there were a lot of variables at the point in time, uncovered wickets. So every day things would change, session to sessions things would change. With covered wickets, it does that. With uncovered wickets, the degree of that would have been so much more,
Mm,
right? So he would have had to contend with that, and the quality of bats weren't great at that point in time, and still managed to do so well. So I think he knew about the things that worked for him, and if it was maybe just three or four things, and he just stuck to those three or four things with just like Herculean discipline,
yeah.
right? To be able to just say this, like a Virat Kohli chasing, man.
Mm,
Like you know the pattern, you know what he's gonna do, you know what he's gonna do in the middle of the innings when he's set. He's not gonna look for boundaries. He's gonna run those twos really hard and run you down so that when the death over comes, you are even your fielders are physically tired because he's constantly pushing you,
mm.
right? So he gets to that place. So he's not just targeting the bowlers, he's targeting the guys on the field as well. If you're a weak fielder, God help you, right? If you take time to get to a ball, then God help you. He's targeting you as well. So the awareness of what works for you and to go and repeat that constantly on a day-to-day, match-to-match basis is what makes them like the best in the world.
Fascinating. It's really good. I'm
Mm.
glad we talked about this, man. I don't know what level of form we're in as podcasters, but we'll see. You've got a paddle tournament, so let's go through a bunch of
Mm.
what do you call them? Super chats. I just
Yes.
realized I've got the whole thing really small here. V says, "Hello, Robbie. Used to be your fan in the late 2000s, so he's no longer
Uh,
your fan. That's how I read
yeah.
that. How do you
I'm
feel
certain he's
about
a
the
Virat.
thriller?"
We must be a Virat Kohli fan. So after after things he heard, he's like, oh, I'm not his
He-
fan anymore.
How did you feel about the thriller 2-wicket win versus England? I remember your clutch knock that day.
Obviously felt great, yeah. As in, I was very lucky that in like the 50, 60 odd matches I played for India, there's some matches that like people will remember for posterity. And this was one of them, right? As in, I didn't play. It was the sixth match of the series. The first five I didn't play. I was just sitting and waiting in the wings. And then 5 minutes before the toss, I get to play this game. And I'm batting at number eight after MS, who was batting at number seven. So I went in a bat, I think, when GG got out, and we needed about 80 in 8 overs, 83 in 8 overs. And that was like unfathomable in 2007 because the onset of T20 cricket hadn't come into mainstream, hadn't happened yet. So 18 8 overs were like, oh no, no chance. So it felt like I pulled a rabbit out of the hat at that point in time, and it was definitely a clutch knock. Again, all about confidence. And the thing I was in those 5 matches, all I was working on was my game for the T20 World Cup. So it's like I want to come up with a new shot. So I tried a new shot in the nets and kind of worked on that, tested it out, tried it out against our bowlers, first practice bowlers, then the coaches with the when they were throwing, and then the net bowlers, and then against the main bowlers from the squad. And then when I got that done, I was like, okay, I'll take this to the match now. That became the standard, and so a lot of confidence going into that game, I think, which is why. I was able to take Neil there to the Oval, the same ground that I played that clutch game in 2007.
Sadashan says, "How to face a ball that dips? I can't get the timing right."
It's flow, buddy. There's no manual to it. To be honest, you got to keep your eyes on the ball and mentally be prepared to face two variations in the sense the quick delivery and the slow delivery. And sometimes they have variations within the pace of the slow deliveries as well. Harshal's got a regular slow delivery that just comes slow off the wicket. Then he's got one that loops in the end, dips as well. So there are bowlers who have pulled out variations with this as well. Bretley's got the slower ball where he holds the ball right in, right, and he releases like a normal delivery, and it just does not come to you. So the only way to kind of attack or score runs to those balls is to watch the ball very, very closely.
Shashank says, "What's happening with Klaassen? Have bowlers figured out what to bowl to him? Is it a matter of form? I always felt like he was basically invincible." So I think what has happened to him, we see a lot. It happened to Puran as well, where you go through a period of coming up with a method, and for 2 or 3 years, it just takes a while for that bowlers and the coaches and the analysts to
To
work
catch
out
up.
exactly what to do, and then they do, and that player has a slight dip. But Puran's probably better now than he was when he had his original surge of form. So that's just how it kind of works, and you can't stay ahead of the game. I mean, you're lucky if you get 2 years now. Look at someone like Tim David. He
It's very
probably
hard.
had about 18 months, right? And people
Yeah.
work him out, and then he had to find that next level.
You have to keep evolving as a player today, whether you're a bowler or a batter. You have to come up with variations, especially with the level of scrutiny and analysis that happens on each batter and each bowler. You really need to be well aware of what your repertoire of shots are, what your repertoire of deliveries are, or variations are that exist in your batting or bowling, and then bring certain variations for certain tournaments or for certain seasons. Like you can use a certain number of shots for 1 and 1.5 seasons, and then just take that shot out of the bag for another season and a half. Like that's how you kind of stay fresh and stay renewed, and you don't allow people to kind of catch up with everything that you have to offer. But it also could be emotional, mental, emotional with him
Yeah.
when you're scoring runs at a very high, at a very high rate for over an extended period of time. It can get boring. You don't feel emotionally high anymore. It doesn't do that for you, so to speak. And then you can just kind of taper off. It's like being on a seesaw, man. You're trying to balance, you know, and you find that sweet spot just for as long enough, and then you go off balance and you come back there again.
Forward Actuary
Whoa.
says, "Please list your best 11 for the Indian T20 side." Robbie, I think you've got one ready.
No, I don't. I'm like, this is so speculative. Everyone's got an opinion about this right now that I'm like, let's just look at what squad they pick. Because like I think it'll tell you what the thought process of the irrespective of thought process of the leadership group and the coaching staff and the BCCI is moving forward in T20 cricket, especially for the World Cup that's coming up. So I think it'll put into place who are the bunch of players that they're focusing on, right? I think from this, whatever the selection group is right now, whoever gets selected will predominantly be the primary group that Gautam will back, because like knowing him, he likes to back a bunch of players. And so if like you'll see once this team is announced, I think these are the players that will be backed for this format of the game, is my feeling based on what I
I
know, Gauti.
I think Jasper Bumrah would be in the best 11. There's my hot take, everyone.
Very hot.
Mansage says, how much of form is just variance meeting the hot hand fallacy? So much of this feels like players media imposing a narrative on a small sample size. Well, I mean, I think what we tried to show today is that form is a combination of not knowing exactly what you were doing when you were doing it right, confidence, and repeatability. So form actually exists, Mansage, because it exists in every part of life.
In
Just
every aspect of life.
do you know what the hot hand fallacy is?
No, I don't. And I was thinking I'm going to talk to that.
Yeah, so the hot hand fallacy was this. It was a study in basketball about how in basketball, when someone's shooting really well in a game, you keep passing the ball back to them and they keep shooting. Whereas actually, if you're a good shooter, you shouldn't. That doesn't make any sense. Whether you're in form or out of form that game, you should keep giving the ball to people. That was the original study, basically saying that it doesn't exist. Now they've done another study on that study that suggests actually I might have got the original one wrong, and there is an element of it. It's not as much as humans believe. This is the day I'm going to score, and this is the day I'm not going to score. But there is an element there. But variance is obviously does make a lot of sense, and it's one thing that cricketers, especially batters, have to deal with so much, that your scores are going to be so variable that you have to understand that there are highs and there are lows within that. But the problem then, man, Serge, is if you have 3 or 4 lows in a row, try explaining to a 22-year-old who's just come into the IPL that variance exists. He's going to lose his confidence, right? Even if intellectually he agrees with you, he's going to lose some confidence. And if you lose confidence and you're facing a 90-mile-an-hour bowler from South Africa who doesn't give a shit about, your confidence and your mental well-being, if you don't believe, that becomes a big part of it. And a lot of form can be at the top level about that belief, which is kind of what we were trying to talk about earlier.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think, and this is where you can't make small of what confidence is, and because it's so much about how good you feel about your skills, and that's what kind of brings confidence, because you're able to repeat something over and over again.
Siddharth says, what else can Shubman do to deal with his ball dragging back into his pad issues? What could he add to his game that he hasn't tried already?
I reckon, and I've thought about this, right? And I feel right now he's very side on, right? And in his initial movement, he comes into the middle stump just a touch. So you see his front foot going past his back foot in his initial movement, and not towards mid-off or extra cover, but more towards cover point and covers. And so when the ball comes back in, he has to open up his hips, and he gets late whilst doing that. So for me, I feel if he can, in his stance, get his front foot to point towards the right of covers or towards extra covers, and in his stance, and as far as shoulder is concerned, he, instead of facing the head of the umpire, like his shoulders facing the head of the umpire, if that can open up to the right shoulder of the umpire. So if the umpire is standing here and I'm looking at Shubman, his left shoulder is pointing to my right shoulder. So that gives him the access of both his eyes to watch the ball, and with his feet being slightly open towards extra cover, he doesn't have to take the time to open up his hips to allow the bat face to come through.
Because otherwise
the pathway,
the way he's standing at the moment, he actually has to physically move his leg out of the way to be able to flow through. And I think
in Test cricket, he might have to compromise one shot, is the square drive outside the off stump, but I think that's the only shot he probably have to hold back from, because if he tries to place that shot, like from here, because he's here, his feet won't get to the square drive, it has to get to the sixth stump, It'll
Yeah.
probably get to the fourth stump, the fifth stump, but your sixth and seventh stump, his foot's not going to get there, or it's not going to move in that direction very easily because of the way he's setting up. But if he's aware of that and is happy to sacrifice that one shot, he'll still get runs wide of mid off, extra covers, maybe even left of covers. But beyond that, say right of point, that cover drive right of point, he probably won't get. Because he has to move too far across to get into position to play that shot well. I think if he makes this one adjustment, it'll just like LBW won't be an issue at all.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. But what I would say is if he makes that one adjustment, something else will become his issue because you don't solve
That's what I
the
said.
puzzle.
The issue that can come is this.
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
the
that's
fact
what I mean.
that
No,
shot,
but you've talked about the knowable ones. There's also just the unknowable ones, right? Of if he's used to watching it with one eye and he's now looking at it more with two.
No, he still watches it with two eyes. He's not looking at the ball like this, right?
Yeah.
He's already.
Yeah, but you want him to go further, don't you?
Like, I just want to go just that much.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So it's not much. It's like he's here right now.
Could you just
and I want to
imagine
go here.
if someone comes on this podcast now and they've just flicked on and it's just you and I moving our heads in different directions, like we're friggin' puppets or something. And everyone's like, what if we entered?
Yeah. I genuinely
Kesh-
believe he won't get out LBW after that, if he makes that one change.
Keshav says, you talked about form, but what about momentum in cricket? Jarrod has been on record saying he doesn't believe in it. Jarrod does not believe in it. That is correct. What about you, Robbie? Does an analyst perceive momentum differently than a player?
Momentum does work. But again, the thing about cricket is it only works to a certain degree. Like in Test cricket, the momentum of good form from one session to the other, one day to the other can be carried over. But more often than not, it can't be carried over. You could be batting overnight at 225, but you have to go back there the next day in your head, humble enough to play that first ball like you're batting on zero. Then after the first 20 runs, you can again feel like $1 million and be batting like you're batting on 240, right? So that you need to be able to operate from that place of humility to acknowledge the variables that exist in the game. Right, so momentum works, but not to the degree that we imagine it to work.
The issue I have with momentum is, essentially what we're talking about is confidence. Is that team more confident at the moment, right? But if you say it as confidence, it makes a lot more sense. If you say momentum, it doesn't make any sense because any game that we watch, there's going to be ebbs and flows within that game. So if momentum worked, the teams who were on top would always just go on to win. And that's not the way that it works at all. And so the real problem I have with momentum is with sports commentators. Right. And sometimes writers, but generally sports commentators use it a bit more where they're like, they've got the momentum going into the next match. And I was like, well, no, they don't. They have the confidence going into the next match. They're going to start at 0-all when they go into that game. And all these different things are going to happen. If they're relying on momentum, they're going to get slapped in the face. Right. They're going to actually have to, as you said, start again. And I think that's the issue I have with it.
Confidence in momentum, right?
Yeah. It's become a
shortcut. In momentum.
Yeah.
When you say, I'm sorry for interjecting, but confidence in momentum, because I felt like I'll lose my trail of thought there. So when you have momentum and teams have momentum. So momentum is different when you're considering teams and when you're considering individuals, right? So momentum as far as a team is concerned, when you're going on back-to-back wins, then what happens that you have a certain amount of momentum going into a game, but in the sense of confidence with, okay, things are working for us.
Yes.
Right. But if as a group you can come together and identify what are the things that are working for us and what are the things we're doing right, and that helps us work well together as a team at this point in time, that helps us get momentum in a game. Because it's also about capturing momentum in a game, right? It could be like getting off to a good start at the game, whether you're batting or bowling, getting 2 wickets in the first 3 overs, or getting in the power play, getting 2 or 3 wickets, right? That gives you momentum. That gives you advantage, and you hold on to that advantage. Right, that momentum can be created as a team, right? It can be created as a group, and I agree with you. It's quite nuanced in the sense that momentum begets confidence, confidence begets momentum as well.
Yeah, but my issue isn't with the idea that momentum exists, because if you are a team who is used to winning, you know how to win, right? And so you could argue, but that team has momentum. But that's not what we're really saying. What we're really saying is this is a team that's doing all the right things over and over again, and they put themselves into a good position to be able to win this next game. What's bad is India's won a test match, but England won the test match before, so now India has the momentum. That that's not how that works. They're 1-1. They have both seen each other's strengths and weaknesses, and if you looked at the last game, you would have seen that there were times when India was on top and times when England was on top. And so it becomes this catchphrase that doesn't mean anything. It's literally people like, if you're a sports fan and the commentator
You're
or
getting
the
old,
writer,
man.
no, I've always felt
You're,
like
you're,
this.
you're, you're nitpicking on stuff right now. Imagine a
No,
broadcaster imagine you having to describe the nuance of this statement.
this
While,
is
while you have 30
our
seconds before going into an
job.
ad.
Robbie,
But
this is our job, though. It is our job to actually tell people what is happening. It is not our job to say something
how many people
before
will get
we
it?
sell air conditioners.
But how many people will actually get that? Like, this makes such a great avenue for us to have, bring this to the fore and talk about it. But in 30 seconds, it will not make sense to people. Like, what is the guy blabbering is what they will say.
Well, this is what comes back to what you were talking about before, about learning, about communication, about how to podcast and everything.
Sure.
This is why Harsha Bogle is Harsha Bogle, and I won't name other people, but they're not Harsha Bogle. It is the ability to be able to do it and not
Articulate
talk down
stuff.
to people, right? That is
Yeah.
the gig. And if you can't do it, you don't end up at the top of the tree, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I love Mutton Biryani says, love the book, Jarrod. This one. Me and my friends are still debating about Mitali Raj. They're still not agreeing on the Raj part. Surely she was a level above. There's a lot of younger people who've only watched Mitali Raj in the last 7 or 8 years when T20 cricket has taken over and when one-day cricket got more high scoring, who don't understand that for 15 years before that, Mitali Raj was Sachin Tendulkar and no one in women's cricket knew how to dismiss her. She was almost perfect technically. But if you watch the last 10 years and you're a strike rate person, you're not going to get it. But if you go back and you know, when I first started watching women's cricket, the first time I watched her bat, I went, how on earth is anyone in this game ever going to dismiss her? There aren't many players that you will ever do that. And to be honest, she probably was best suited to test cricket, and women don't play a lot of test cricket on TV.
Unfortunately, yeah. It's true.
Aditya says, how much time do bowlers take to get rhythm in a match?
It takes a while. No, because biomechanically to get into that space, you need to be warmed up. Everything needs to feel right. There's not a day that a fast bowler is. And when you're saying bowlers, I'm going to go with fast bowlers because I have a lot of empathy for fast bowlers. Because there's not a day that a fast bowler is bowling without any pain. They're always bowling. They're always in pain. Always. So it takes a while before your body gets desensitized to the pain that it's experiencing at that point in time. Warm enough for the blood to flow into all those different achy areas of your bodies, and so it takes maybe 2 or 3 overs, and so basically, which is why a lot of bowlers bowl a lot before they come and bowl in the game. So it's a lot of hard work. It takes a while sometimes.
The best way to work it out, if you want to work out what it's like, is go to the gym and do a bunch of exercises you've never done on a bunch of machines you've never used before, and then the next day try and go for a jog. That's what fast bowlers do.
Yeah, no, don't go for a jog. Try and bowl.
Well, okay, try and bowl, but that's essentially what they do. It's incredible, especially when you talk to them about, you know, we haven't even got into toenails yet. Parth says, would Wokes be a legend if young Stokes and Anderson didn't happen? Or was he always a secondary all-rounder? Oh, I like that. He would have got more opportunities. I think Wokes would have developed more if he had the opportunities that Anderson or Stokes did overseas. Once he became Anderson light, you can't really use him as much overseas. And so he would come in for one match and not learn. Anderson wasn't always a good bowler overseas. He had to develop himself. And that's a lot of England seamers are like that. I do think, though, that Wokes' batting, as technically correct as it is, has always been quite limited. And so I don't think he would have been like a Stokes level batter or anything like that. I know.
No, but if he got the opportunities, I think he would have improved a lot as a batter. It's also about confidence,
no doubt,
right?
I don't know if he ever gets to like a Stokes level, though, right? Maybe he gets to a Sean Pollock level. Is that fair?
You never know. You never know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's debatable.
Definitely. What isn't debatable is that Robbie needs to go play paddle now.
Yes.
So thank you very much.
I'm looking forward to my Monday social.
And we're not even
Thank you,
talking
guys.
about the fact, we're not even talking about the fact that Robbie has a new habit, which is so nerdy that I'm not going to say on air because I don't want it to be aggregated. I don't want people to attack him on Instagram for being a nerd. But you just have to know, if you think you're a nerd for listening to this podcast, he's a bigger nerd than you. And we will see you again next week.